So, uh, people have been going crazy about this what you call it Starfield scenario. Um, the game has always seemed bleh to me. Like I'm not really not even a not really. I'm not a Bethesda person, so there was never anything that drew me to what it is that Starfield was presenting. For the most part, a lot of it looks just way too similar to No Man's Sky, especially what the current edition is right now. So it kind of was on those things that just, why don't I just play that? I have that game instead. Um, and it being an Xbox exclusive, I'm not an Xbox guy. Don't really gotta get I never intended to play the game. Is what I'm trying to say. It Bethesda has always had those dead-eyed looking characters and those kind of iffy, story quests and plots and stories and story quests and stories. You stupid motherfucker. Those iffies, quest lines and things like that. Nothing that really jumped out at me that kind of uh, grab my goat like The Witcher 3 or shit that would happen in like Dragon Age, stuff like that. I'm that kind of an RPG type of person. But not to say that the game is bad, but it's just for the most part, Starfield itself just kind of doesn't look like anything I would want to play. Um, but needless to say, there's been a lot of people playing the game, and power to them. It's crazy because when you think about exactly what was riding on this game, there was um, so much need to be done because of this game. It's Bethesda again, as well as it being an Xbox launch title that won't fuck up. So, like thinking about exactly what it is that they depend on this game, there's a lot riding on it. Now, getting past all of that, and then essentially going into the whole pronoun situation, I find hilarious because of the fact of generally what the fallout was because of the content that started, they initiate the fallout. That's what I find hilarious in its entirety because of the was it Habs versus Babyface. Um, when he did his rant, that was 100, like to me, was 100% fucking justified. He had every right to be upset at the pronoun aspect of the game the way that he was because of what it represents. And considering the fact that he got as mad as he did, it's kind of one of those things where it's like I can tell he knows the writing on the wall, like how I know the writing on the wall. Seeing this shit in a game, even as minuscule as it might have been, for as small of a thing if it was, even because of the fact, like it's like all of this shit is so fucking necessary. But for as minuscule as it was, and it's like, hey, in the beginning they asked you to choose your pronouns, and then he blew up on this shit, and it's like, yes, he had every right to do that because of the fact that as you're playing the game, it's not even a fucking factor. Which would lead you to the understanding of if it's not a factor in the game in itself, then why the fuck is it in the game at all? You see how that mindset kind of coerce. It's crazy because understandably what people don't get is that this is a slippery slope. It's the thing that essentially we've got long time ago, or basically what we still get within gaming media, where someone does one thing and it starts shifting and changing the dynamic of everything. It just takes place slowly. This shit is a slow fucking crawl. And think about essentially Last of Us and Last of Us Part 2, where with The Last of Us, an abhorrent amount of that game was changed depending on how essentially feminism wanted to bring about the way the game was. Hell, you listen to Neil Druckmann talk about the original idea, that sounds equally as interesting as what The Last of Us became. Then when you see what Part 2 did with the actual IP that is The Last of Us, and it's like, oh, now you're taking gamers completely out of context, and instead it's to deliver some type of shitty ass message. And it does not work and it does not go over well. Now, again, don't let this deter you from Starfield, because again, if you're someone who enjoys those types of games, I'm not trying to dissuade you from playing them. I'm sorry when I start rambling, guy. I'm quite thirsty. But don't let anything that anyone's saying about the game stop you from trying to play it. If you got Game Pass, which is honestly the smartest thing to do if you have an Xbox, you can already just fucking play it. It seems like an interesting game. You're able to do a lot of shit, but it is Bethesda, and Bethesda is known for having a bunch of fucking bugs. And realistically, the biggest highlight of their games have always generally been to play that shit on PC anyway. So, but like, going back to the pronoun thing, look at exactly what happened with the pronoun thing. A guy modded the game already to remove that content from the beginning, from the menu selection screen, where when you're picking your character and making this shit up, he already modded the game to remove that part. And they banned his fucking account. Now, do you not understand when people initiate or they say shit as if, why are you making this a big deal? This is not such a big, like, stop making this a big deal. It's not that big of a deal, blah, blah, blah. And then you see shit like that, and it's like, no, it is a big deal, because that's what these people want you to do. They want you to accept this shit and like wholeheartedly. But anytime someone has any negative aspects against it, they want them to back down or feel foolish because of that negative approach and aspect towards it. It's the craziest fucking thing in the world, because you have so many people who will sit there and clamor and say it's not that big of a deal. It's only in the beginning of the game. Why do you care about that? And it's like, well, why did they do it? If it's not that big of a deal, or they themselves don't even care to actually have it be a factor in the game itself, why the fuck is it in the game? And not only that, if it's such a non-fucking factor, couldn't you argue that it seems like a waste of time as well as a inconsistency to even have it in the first place? So let's say they're trying to be inclusive or whatnot and introduce this stuff, or if it's something that basically has been done in other games before and whatnot, that's fine or whatever. But the backlash from what came up, I essentially is, I'll say it's similar to like the Budweiser thing, where it was just a situation where it's not as if this is the first time this has happened, but this was just the straw that broke the camel's back, which is why I understand Hibbs versus Babyface's rant, as well as the Dr. Disrespect one. And it's like, and it's totally justified, because it's like, yeah, the gaming community for years have been showcasing and highlighting and talking about the fact that they are sick of this shit. They're tired of this stuff being put into games, especially when it has no value whatsoever. And the thing is that you have so many people who essentially look towards the game or play the game that then would approach this as I don't care to talk about this, or this isn't something that I give a damn about. It just popped up and I went past it and everything. And it's like, that's a fine approach. That's a fine. It's an okay approach to have, but you have to understand, especially people who are immersed, or they play video games, they review video games, or they understand the community and things like that. You have to acknowledge the fact that this is something that has been a long time coming and will have disastrous effects later on, whether similar to the whole Cyberpunk 2077 situation. Let's not forget, a lot of that game was essentially kind of halted because of the fact that they got backlash from a small marginalized group of people kind of tripping over some of the ads that they had in the game, which made them want to go in and revamp shit. But the game itself was kind of highlighting and focusing on that being a particular, and it was like, why are they marginalizing are these people and what? And it's like, yeah, but that's kind of the point of the game in this futuristic world where they would do shit like that. And it's like, all that goes right over their head. But it's like, we went in and decided to change up some shit, which is going to waste money, waste time just to try and do this stuff. And it's like, did you ever stop to conclude that the people who are like the small percentage of people who are complaining ain't even going to be people who are play your game? But it's just something where it's like, you can, it's a snowball effect. And you can't really get mad at the people who essentially are trying to advocate and push to stop the snowball when it's just a tiny rock, you know? And it's like again, it's like, I'm not saying you need to kowtow to their concept and like being like, okay, no, they're right, just shut up and listen to whatever they say, don't do pronouns and stuff like that in games no more. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you're someone who essentially doesn't like to see an overabundance of this stuff inside of your video games, then you should probably acknowledge or at least understand where he's coming from in terms of him getting upset about this, because he's essentially getting upset early on while you'll be getting upset later. And so realistically, that's the only problem, is that, yeah, you can see the writing on the walls. You can tell where this shit is heading to within the video games. It's a slippery slope. This shit is a snowball rolling down a hill, just gaining more snow. And so it's hard to realistically explain, or like to try and combat the people who are approaching this with it's not that big of a deal, it's not that big of a deal, or I don't care. Well, more so just or I don't the I don't care people, because of the fact that it's like, yeah, you don't care now, but by the time it gets to the point where it affects a game and you do care, it'll be too late. It'll be a staple within the video gaming market and the community, to where this is what they do to games now. There's nothing you can do about that. And it's like, who would have saw this coming? It's like, we told you back then. And much like to the people who were complaining about pronouns being introduced in games before Starfield. And it's like, dude, we've been screaming about this before this game. It's just that now this is a big game. Those were big streamers talking about this. And then you had even bigger streamers going, what are you worried about? What's the big deal? Quit crying about it. It's not that big of a deal. And it's like, it is a big deal because of the lasting effects that this shit is going to have in the community overall. And again, why even, is like, again, do you have to understand, it's like, why even have that into the game if it's not even going to be utilized? That seems weird. It seems odd. I mean, we already got games that essentially don't even allow you to pick male or female. It'll say fucking body type, which is weird. It's very weird. But now it's like, okay, you can pick this type of body, this type of face and whatnot, but what would you like to be called? Yeah, do they even address you in that manner in the game? Not at all. Then why the fuck does that matter? Why are we wasting time with that? You know, it's like being able to pick what kind of hair you can have, what kind of hair your character will have, but the entire game, their head is in the helmet, so it doesn't matter. I would say a perfect example of this the entirety of this would be the South Park game, both Stick of Truth and Fractured But Whole, where in the beginning of the game you get to pick your name, and whatever name you spell out doesn't matter, because Cartman calls you Butthole. You know, he calls you douchebag. My bad. Yeah, and he was like, no matter what, you'll be referred to as douchebag. And so throughout the entire game, no matter what name you want to pick, what gender you are, what character you decide to choose or play as, you are a douchebag. and with that, it's like, you can see that actually resonate within the gameplay or within the world of South Park. It's something that's very on brand. It's fine. But with this, it's like, well, you're only doing this to cater and gain brownie points, you know? But then it's not, and then like now you actually have people who are essentially wanting to use the pronouns, or are upset at the fact that the game itself doesn't actually address you under the pronouns. So it doesn't even matter. I believe like there's some people who, even though they picked female characters and they preferred the the man pronouns, like him or whatever, they'll still call them she in the game. And it's like, you couldn't even be bothered to program just a couple of words being changed or whatnot. And it's like, well, they couldn't, because it was a fucking afterthought. They don't care. They never cared. They only did it to sit there and go, yeah, look at us, we're inclusive. Yeah, diversity. It's Disney shit all over again. But there's nothing behind it that says that it matters, or that says that they care, or that they give a fuck. And so because of that, they should get called out for doing it. That's why I like with his versus Babyface rant, when he just like, because we're boring. And it's like, yeah, when he said that, I was like, that's right on the money. The only reason they did that is because they're boring. They have no idea what it is that they need to do in order to resonate with their audience, much like a multitude of different gaming studios. And because they have lost base with their audience so much, that they only believe that if we do whatever is considered popular or what they believe is popular, they think that's going to get them an A plus grade or whatnot. Hell, now it's gotten to the point where a lot of gaming media has decided to trick the reviewers and shit like that by releasing a game that's partially done early on and then essentially telling people, well, don't judge us based off of the shit that's going to come later. Judge us on the stuff that we're giving to you now. Even though realistically, without the stuff that they give to you, that they're supposed to give you later, the game is incomplete. It's an incomplete game. They did it with Halo Infinite. And Halo Infinite still has shit waiting for it, like shit that you have to wait for in order for it to come out, I believe. And realistically, the game got delayed by a year because of how fucking ugly it looked. And then it's like, well, when they released the game finally, it wasn't even a complete fucking game. There was still just a bunch of shit missing. Remember Overwatch 2? And it's like, this shit is a common practice. I mean, we recently had the fallout of the developer thing from the Baldur's Gate incident. And now you're seeing essentially another side of how hollow these people's feelings are towards whatever it is that you take seriously. Now, again, I'm not knocking anyone that actually takes the whole pronoun situation seriously, like in terms of being referred to as certain things and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the fact that, are you acknowledging that this game is essentially having this aspect added onto it, but it does absolutely nothing towards the gameplay itself, the mechanics, or even the overall storytelling, thus making it seem as if their plight on using your pronouns was only just that, to use them, to either get you to buy the game, because in the beginning we get you to pick your pronouns. Does the game actually facilitate and work along those lines? Fuck no. Why the hell would we do that? It's like, but you got to pick. And it's like, well, that doesn't even really fucking matter. Who cares? and it's like, it's a lame, it's a huge excuse for actually being innovative, for actually making something that's worthwhile, for putting their all into a game that doesn't basically look like a giant hollow husk of a game that just, realistically, I see people playing and talking about it and whatnot, and it's like, much like with everything Bethesda, it's generally like you just kind of have to be in the motion of like, this is shit I like to play on its own. It's not really the story or nothing like that. Any of that shit is gonna win any awards anytime soon. But hey, for the most part, got a lot of people talking about the game, so there's that. But yeah, I feel as if this is a situation, or this is a concept right now that you have a lot of people who wish to ignore it, and I wish they didn't, because taking note of this, acknowledging it, will help in the long run when it comes to video games. You know, whether you agree or disagree, it still will help in terms of understanding and establishing exactly where the overall community stands as a whole with this shit. Because if they don't have a grasp on that, it's going to keep coming and keep happening. And it's going to be just as empty, just as hollow, and just as fucking pointless as it is in Starfield. But it's like, I wish those who immediately just kind of were being blissfully ignorant or just wanting to ignore this debacle, I wish they would actually give an opinion on something. You know, even if that opinion in itself is, I don't see the big deal. You know, it's still an opinion. And it's like, but even that still accounts for something. But for the most part, this is like, again, this is one of my things where I'm like ranting and raving and being pissed off or whatnot. But I'm more so just, I completely agree with the notion that the shit shouldn't be in the games in the first place. Because why? You know? Like, hell, what was it? Someone actually said, fuck, I forgot what it was. And it's like, if the idea behind trans people is to actually become the opposite sex, correct? If that is the case, then why would they need to have anything to verify or identify them within like the transitional period? Can't they just play as that opposite sex? Isn't that the end goal anyway for them? So if you're a woman transitioning into a man, you can play as a man. So you will be a man. And if you're a man, transition to a woman. You get to play as a woman. Why do you need to play as someone that is transitioning when you can be the thing that you want? It's like, you not see how crazy? And it's like, so then why then have a different, like a, an alternate way of addressing these people or talking to these people or whatnot? And it's like, fuck, none of this, like, does none of that click for any of these people? But what the fuck do I know? I just play video games, what the hell do I know? Oh boy, I sure hope Dragon Age isn't terrible. Like, I know it's gonna have some bad parts to it, but I hope it's not terrible. I mean, Starfield is Bethesda, but Dragon Age, that's EA, and that's always in the game. Oh fuck! Oh Jesus Christ! Oh boy. Yeah, I think for the most part that's the main thing. I just don't want games that I want to play just turn out like shit because of this crap. Because it's crap. Like, just stop doing it. Seriously, stop doing it. You kind of have no reason to do it at this point. But there they go. They're doing it again.